Hello, everybody. I've got a bit of reverb, sorry. That should be better. Hi, everybody. I hope that's better. Hope you can hear me now. I can see Tim Teeman is waiting backstage to talk to us. So I'm assuming that everybody can hear me. Yeah, I was told when I first started in Royal News that it was either feast or famine. And it's definitely been just so busy. The Royal News cycle has just been so busy the last few weeks and months. And it's, oh, great. You can see and hear me. Excellent. It's just been absolutely crazy. And of course, the big thing when I started the Substack, I started it in August because usually that's an incredibly quiet month. The Royals, they're all on holiday. A lot of the royal journalists are on holiday. You know, so there's a kind of conspiracy to do nothing. But you know, that didn't work out. Andrew Loney published his book. And then I knew that in September, the state visit was coming, the Trump state visit. And actually, that's what led to, I know, the left shoulder of my jacket. You're right, it is torn. Somebody's telling me, Tim, that I'm going to just... Does he know the left? It's disgrace. The moths have got it. The moths have got it. I'll take it off. I need to get a new jacket. So anyway, yes, it's been incredibly busy. And then today I had this great scoop about a sort of coda to the royal visit, so to the state visit. So anyway, here's Tim Teeman, who I hope is going to ask me all about it.
Morning. Hello, Tom. Hello.
Tim, how's it going?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Tom. I hope everyone's having a good Thursday.
We used to speak to each other every single day, and now we're talking to each other every single day again, and it's so awesome.
It's actually really nice for me. So, and I hope it's nice for the audience. It's just really nice for me. So,
yeah.
He said very selfishly. Well, let's get right to business.
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil it. So, do you want to tell people what your scoop was? The scoop involved. I will. Shall I give it a bit of a verbal...
Warm them up.
Bit of a verbal drum roll. The scoop involved Donald Trump and Queen Camilla, and Donald Trump's relatively recent state visit to the UK. And he taps Camilla on the shoulder because he wants some dish, doesn't he, Tom? Now, what dish did he want from Queen Camilla?
Oh, I mean, it's just so awful, isn't it? I mean, I know we should expect better, but you would just hope that, you know, when the leader of the free world is meeting the King and Queen of England, that he would, you know, I don't know. Anyway, so basically, I was told by somebody, you know, who knows what they're talking about, that one of the first things, not the first thing, but one of the first things he said to Camilla was, "So what's the gossip on Meghan then? What's going on there?"
No, mate, it's just so odd. The interesting thing is, how did Camilla respond? For me, what you convey in the article about Camilla's response is a very classically British, I'd say capital B British way of not maintaining a diplomatic silence, but in the most besieged but polite way, all in a split second. How did Camilla respond to this inquiry?
So it's very interesting, actually, because what I was told was that she sort of elegantly declined to comment, but then apparently with a wry smile gave a symbol like that to show that her hands were tied effectively and that she couldn't say anything, which I thought was super interesting, and you know, totally on brand for Camilla, shall we say? Shall we put it that way? But yeah, and I mean, it's funny, isn't it, Tim? Because I mean, you know as well as I do that in royal reporting, the kind of one of the things that you're always looking for and you're always being asked, and one of the things that's always great to find out is how they really relate to people behind closed doors. You know, the thing people always say to you about what are they really like. And I think these sort of things give us little clues about what they are really like. And I think that's why it's kind of interesting.
I also think it's interesting. There are a few things that strike me about the exchange. One, the question from Donald Trump, which would seem to imply that, I mean, to go straight in on Meghan Markle as his line of inquiry or wanting a gossip line about, still seems to suggest that he's very focused on her in some kind of way. We discussed in our conversation yesterday about the sort of history of animosity flowing between both of them, and that would seem to suggest that that is still current in Mr. Trump's mind, President Trump's mind. The other interesting thing is if the hand movement that you showed, sorry if that's the camera for everyone, but that's what you're kind of saying Camilla's visual response was this, right?
Yeah.
So, Tom, do we decode that as a kind of, as Camilla's way of saying, is that also, does that imply some level of negativity that she would want to express if she was going to say some words, but feels that she can't express?
It does, doesn't it? I mean, it definitely does. It's not like, oh no, Mr. President, there's nothing to say. We you know, everything's marvelous. It's like I can't speak about it. My hands are tied. So, and I mean, look, there's no denying that there is, as we know, you know, tremendous hostility towards Meghan and Harry, you know, at all levels of the family. And that I think is, you know, pretty open. I think Harry, there's been an attempt by the king to reconcile with him, but I don't think anyone's ever seriously talked about bringing Meghan for a cup of tea at Clarence House yet. You know, although there has been a kind of story going around the past few weeks that, you know, Harry would like to bring her back and that she wants to come back, and of course that would fit with a bit of the narrative of what we've been talking about the last few days about Meghan being, you know, slightly on maneuvers, being out and about and putting herself about. So I mean, it wouldn't look, it's never going to do anyone's harm, anyone's brand any harm to have a meeting with the king. But I think what it says for me is that it's very clear that the royal family don't, you know, they don't have a high opinion of Meghan, and I'm sure there is loads of gossip, and you know, she can't talk about it to President Trump. It did also really remind me when after the Queen died, Craig Brown wrote a very funny book called A Voyage Around Her Majesty, or A Voyage Around the Queen.
Explain to people watching why Craig Brown is such a figure. Explain who he is.
Gosh, well, was he wasn't the editor of Private Eye, was he?
No, he's a long-standing British columnist in both, I think, right, Private Eye and The Spectator. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but a kind of he has a wonderful humorous turn of phrase. He's a wonderful satirist, and he has a wonderful eye, especially on, you know, a kind of gimlet eye, I suppose you could say, on the workings of royals. Kind of periodic. Some of his finest, some of the writing I've enjoyed has been absolutely precision targeted on that. And did he write, Tom? Did he write ever a biography or some kind of thing on the Queen? Can you remind me what that was?
So he wrote a brilliant biography. It was an unusual format. So it was just a collection of vignettes about Princess Margaret, first of all, called Ma'am Darling, I think it was called. It was very, very funny. And then he repeated the trick essentially with the Queen, and it was called a Voyage Around the Queen, and it collected anecdotes. One of the anecdotes, it was very funny, was that the Queen apparently was having lunch with a friend after Trump's first state visit when she was the monarch, and apparently she complained that Donald Trump was very rude and always looking over her shoulder as if he was looking for somebody more interesting to talk to. And apparently she also said that she couldn't understand the relationship between Melania and Donald Trump, and apparently sighed and said, Well, they must have some kind of arrangement, which is a very a brilliantly British expression.
She wasn't making that gesture that time. Okay.
No.
He was just going for it. Yeah, we should make clear for people watching that when we're mentioning the Queen in that last bit of talk, we talk about Queen Elizabeth, the former Queen, as opposed to we should supply some context if we're talking about this pearl of gossip that you printed today, that you got today,
and which I may say so far has been repeated in the Mail, Us Weekly, The Independent, a couple more. Anyway, it's going around, and I tell you, you're going to be seeing this story everywhere, and everybody.
Well done,
is
Tom.
very welcome to write comments saying it's absolutely ridiculous. Why should we care about this and that? And well, I'll tell you, these things are when these crumbs fall off the table. They are very hard to get because you have to have sources who frankly, really know what they're talking about to tell you stuff like this. And that's why I promise you, Tim, well, you know this, but you're going to be seeing this story in all the media over the next few days and weeks. Some of them may credit the Royalist. Some of them, irritatingly, will, of course, credit the Daily Mail because the Daily Mail was the first to pick it up. But that's the cross.
No worries.
There as an independent journalist.
Did they credit? Have they all credited you as the person who broke the story?
Yeah, they have actually. To be fair, and I've had to email a few of them to get the link added into the Royalist. But they have, which is brilliant. So I'm hoping that it'll be good for my, for my Substack. Yeah.
Well, for people watching, everyone should give Tom some congratulations. These stories aren't easy to get, and there's certainly Tom receives, as I know, as his former editor of a number of years, he receives pushback sometimes on some of the stories. And you have.
Funny enough, they didn't comment on this. They didn't want to.
You always
even off the record, or even friends didn't want to comment.
Because for the people watching, if there isn't much pushback to an exclusive like this that Tom has broken today, then that is kind of a tacit thing of it ain't. You receive a gale of pushback if there's genuine objections and if they feel you've gone very wrong. If there's sort of icy silence. The playing field is a bit clearer. What I was about to say was, Tom, this story focuses Camilla's hand gesture, and this exchange also brings to mind, and we should supply it for people watching and listening, the history. There's some very pertinent history here between Harry and Camilla. Now, we spoke yesterday when we were chatting about Harry's amazing memoir. I think really, frankly, one of the best royal memoirs and royal-related biographies I've ever sort of read, called Spare, which people will remember reading a few years ago. Now, in that book, Harry did not hold back on his feelings towards Camilla. There was a very famous, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, phrasing in it that she'd left bodies in the street in her ascent within the royal family. And clearly, Harry, in the writing of that book and conveying how he felt, not only not much love lost between him and his stepmother, but also a real feeling that she'd ruthlessly and sort of, cruelly and sort of without thought maneuvered her way within the family at his expense. With that, do we know, can you talk to people watching and listening, how does Camilla, do we know now in 2025, feel about Harry? And how does Camilla now in 2025 feel about Meghan, if it's the same or different? What would she have said to Donald Trump if she had unshackled her hands and spoken through her lips? How does Camilla feel about this couple, either separately or together or both?
So she has briefed, with her permission, through named sources, one of her ladies in waiting, who are actually nowadays called companions. She has briefed that she felt very hurt by what Harry said, and he actually made the comment about bodies in the street in an interview promoting the book with Anderson Cooper. In the book, though, he didn't hold back. He said that she'd sacrificed him on her personal PR altar. it's sometimes misquoted that he said she was going to be a wicked stepmother. He didn't say that. He said, I hoped she wouldn't be a stepmother.
That's right. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
Fair enough. And I do also, just on a side note, before I get back to how Harry feels about Camilla, I would totally concur with you about the book being an amazing read. But I would clarify that by saying the first third of it is absolutely amazing, because it's this halcyon picture of these incredible days at Balmoral, and they have to, when you go up the stairs, you have to bow to Queen Victoria. Whenever you open a door, Prince Charles is behind it doing a handstand and falls in your face. It's like a kind of mad Wes Anderson film, and you have to climb up these ladders to get into your bed. And when the footmen literally bring them their fish fingers and chips in front of the telly, they're under a silver cloche that they whip off, and it's absolutely stunning.
Wait, you don't get your fish fingers like that every night? Oh, just me? Oh, okay, sorry.
But the second third of the book, which is largely about his time in the army, I think I could take it or leave it. And he says this incredibly stupid thing about having killed 25 people, which I think is a really daft thing to say, and made him, And then the last third is obviously like a massive edition of Us Weekly, and it's just unbelievable gossip about how much all the awful things that were done to him, and how Kate wouldn't lend Meghan her lip gloss and this kind of stuff. And it's just like, wow, but to get back to how Camilla feels about Harry and Meghan, there's no love lost. But I am told that Camilla has said to Charles, of course you must see your son, of course you must reconcile with him. But it was never an affectionate relationship. It was never a close relationship. Harry and William, as Harry makes very clear in his book, always mistrusted Camilla. She was the other woman in that relationship. They grew up watching their mother being, falling apart because of, what was going on in the marriage.
Right.
And it turns out then, that he's been having an affair with Camilla. And I mean, it is pretty shocking, the stuff that Diana found out about, for example, the day before the wedding, she found cufflinks to Charles engraved with F and G, which stood for Fred and Gladys, which were their sort of nicknames. Yeah. And she was like, who? And he said, oh, Camilla's just a very dear friend and all of that. But she apparently realized in that moment that they were still having a sexual affair.
Yeah.
And she called her sister and said, I don't want to go through with it. And her sister apparently said, well, it's too late, Ducky. Your face is on the tea towels.
That's right. And of course, for any people watching who haven't seen it, it's one of my favorite scenes imagined by Peter Morgan and his team in The Crown in that particular season, when Diana and Camilla have a very charged and everything unsaid that is said in that breakfast meeting in a hotel. And I think it's one of the most brilliantly written scenes in the entire drama. If Harry and Meghan...
and Camilla asked Diana if she likes hunting.
That's right. And it's just everything that is either said or unsaid between them is so tangible and so beautifully played by both actors. Tom, if Harry and Meghan and Camilla don't remain close, but Camilla recognizes and hopes for some kind of reconciliation between father and son on that score, given that William is there day in, day out, and Kate's there day in, day out, has the relationship between Camilla and William softened and warmed very much over the years, in contrast to that relationship she has with Harry? Or is there still a distance of a kind, but maybe more of a polite distance between Camilla and William, and Camilla, William and Kate?
The short answer is no. It hasn't softened and warmed. The spin from the palace is very much that it has, and that William's courteous to her and all of that. But now that is true. William is courteous to her. He does accept it, and he does accept his father's decision. And I think the difference between William and Harry in relation to the whole marriage and the whole, so many of the arguments, is that people sometimes forget that the royal family is essentially based on a military structure, right? So it's like a top-down order of command. It's like a hierarchy, and you have to do what your immediate superior tells you to do. And if you don't, you're disobeying orders. And William definitely respects his father's rank. It's probably easier to respect, right, when you're going to have that rank yourself one day, because if you if you don't respect the rank, then will you be respected with the rank? So William accepts the situation as it is, and his real interest is, what is the long-term good of the monarchy, and of course, his self-interest that everything's stable when it comes to his reign. But a story I've been reporting on a lot in the Royalist is the very fraught relationship between William and Charles. And that does extend to Camilla. I mean, it's not like Camilla drops around to see the kids. Do you know what I mean? It's not that kind of relationship because, at the risk of repeating myself, she was having an affair with his father while she was around, and then his mother, what happened. So it's certainly not a warm relationship. I think that William accepts it. And I think he's grown up about it. And I think that, like a lot of us do, when we get a bit older, we understand that maybe our parents aren't perfect, but they're just trying to do what they could do and get through the day or what have you. So, but he doesn't like Camilla. He doesn't like Camilla, which is interesting because, and not particularly surprising, but it is interesting because when you actually speak to Camilla's friends, they really like her. I mean, they love her. And it's like, they say what a great person she is, and she's the first person you call. And I think there is something very authentic about Camilla. She's not popular. And she'll never be popular in the same way that, Diana would have been or anything like that. And there's certain people who will never forgive her. And someone's just message saying she surrounds herself with gossips. I mean, it's true. It's a very leaky ship, the Parker Bowles ship, and there's a lot of people involved, and there's all kinds of. They're a big clan. There's a big bunch of people. Around them.
It's interesting with Camilla that I was just watching some British television the other day, as us emigres in America want to do sometimes, and it was interesting. Somebody said something on one of the shows that I was watching, saying that when people today talk in the present tense about the Queen, their mind still goes to Queen Elizabeth. Queen. And the people who were having this conversation on television said, it's still so weird. I can't get used to calling Camilla Queen. And they didn't mean it rudely towards Camilla. They were just, there's still, I think, maybe some disconnect between calling her Queen and her being Camilla. People are doing it. The media does it, and everyone respects what it is. I think sometimes there's either a psychic meets linguistic disconnect between calling her that. Tom, back in either around when Charles and Camilla eventually married, or maybe it was in Harry's book or one of the interviews, wasn't the narrative at some point the boys either saying publicly or letting it be known that whatever peace they'd reached with this, it was like a lot of maybe children in that position, either with a dead parent or divorced parents, and then the either one or both parents moving on in some sense. But they wanted their dad to be happy, and in that sense they had accepted Camilla because they realized that whatever else and whatever turbulent water had flown under the bridge, as it were, flowed under the bridge, that this person made their dad happy, and therefore some peace had to be made with that. Is that grounded in any sort of reality?
It's a really interesting one because that was certainly the story that was put about in the newspapers at the time. And Mark Boland, of course, was Camilla and Charles's spin doctor, who was credited with getting that narrative out there. It was subsequently then seemed to be rowed back on, that people said that the boys were manipulated into this, and that they were, and this again is one of Harry's complaints, that they were used to, sacrificed on her personal PR altar, as Harry says.
Okay.
But then in the book, Harry actually says, he says, we were actually happy for Dad, and we just said to him, please don't marry her. So okay. I think there's I'm like all these things, I guess things go back and forth. And actually the other day, Charles's old butler, Grant Harold, said that Harry and William both kind of, manned up on the wedding day and ran after the car and cheered their dad and all that kind of stuff, which I have absolutely no doubt that they did, but I don't think that means that they had a completely straightforward, except, well, we know that Harry didn't, and William, I guess, is more stiff upper lip about it and has kept it more buttoned up.
As we've got you here, this is a big exclusive. Like you say, it's been picked up by multiple media outlets today, and allow yourself some time in the sunshine with exclusive. For the people watching and listening, what obviously you're not going to tell us who and what your sources are, because they're your sources. But in I suppose taking the curtain back a bit, or telling us how the sausage is made, however I'm going to mix the metaphor, what can you tell us about how these stories, the exclusives that you get, either come to you, or the fostering of sources and the consolidation of sources and the building of sources over years of reporting? Where do these, without wanting to break any confidences or reveal your sources, can you tell the viewers and the listeners here kind of how do they come to you, and how have you managed to get to a position where you can report them with confidence?
Well, look, rather than talk about this exact story, because it's still quite fresh and I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but the general terrain of where how I work and that kind of stuff, I suppose I just socially do know quite a lot of these people who are in their circle and in the wider circle. And also, I mean, there's a sort of funny thing, but when you're a journalist and you've been doing it as long as I have, or as long as you have, this, people just tell you stuff. And it's weird, like people just tell you stuff and so you have to be very careful. Like, I think, these quotes are always attributed to Mark Twain or William Randolph Hearst, but there is a great quote, which I think is really true, which says, that journalism is something that someone somewhere doesn't want you to know, and everything else is advertising. So you have to be aware, and in a way, like, you have to be aware that also someone somewhere does want you to know it. Like someone's trying to feed you the information. Someone wants to see it published. That's why they're telling a journalist, So you do have to think slightly carefully about it. I mean, it's probably, if you look at the whole Andrew story that I've been doing, right, about his shooting. Okay, so that's a kind of silly, teacup, just to be aware you may be used as a pawn. So I haven't quite figured out why I can't make these comments show up today. I don't know why, but there we are. Brilliant. There we are.
Hey,
sorry, thanks everybody.
Not over my face. Not over my face. Okay, leave the face.
Sorry.
Hey,
I'm so sorry.
Hey,
it's only your shoulder.
That is not what my agent told me what was going to happen. Okay. Now, I don't ask for much. Tom Sykes. But no words over the face.
No words over my face, exactly. But like, so, I can talk more comfortably about the Andrew shooting story.
Well, let's
because basically, I know people.
Wait a sec. Yeah. Let's explain to people watching and listening what you're talking about, just in case they haven't read the stories. When you say the Andrew shooting story, let's be clear what you're segueing to. Like, what is the story?
So there was actually, after we'd finished talking last night, and it was so funny because people were messaging me on this going, Tom, you can't be using that Instagram clip. It's got copyrighted music on it. And I didn't know what they were talking about. The moment after we finished, the whole video got shut down because Meghan's Instagram tunes had the Guys and Dolls tune and 9 to 5, which are copyright owned by Warner. So I was trying to completely frying my head on YouTube trying to figure out how to take out the copyrighted music. And as I was doing it, the Times is very good. The Times, your alma mater, updates at midnight on the dot. 12:01, the new edition uploads onto its website.
And for our American watchers and listeners, Tom is referring to the Times of London here, not the New York.
Yes, the London Times, as we have to call it. Yes, the London Times. And they had this amazing story saying, you know, once again, that there's nothing the palace can do about Andrew. And this is just as like this new Virginia Giuffre posthumous memoirs coming out with, I mean, we've heard all the allegations before, but we're hearing them all again. And, you know, coming out of the mouth of a dead woman, and, you know, the kids left behind, you know, it's not a good day to be Prince Andrew. And then this story comes out in the London Times, basically saying that Buckingham Palace kind of saying, we take all this incredibly seriously. We're not grinning and we're not bearing it. It's awful. But basically saying there's nothing we can do. Basically saying we can't take away his title because that would require an act of parliament. We can't take away his print. And also, by the way, then he'd still be Prince. And that sounds even better. It's like, that's not the point. That is so not the point. Like how it sounds, do you know what I mean? Like it's absolutely, you know, like, and of course, everybody just at this stage is like, if it takes an act of parliament, maybe you better get on with like telling His Majesty's Parliament to get on and pass the act, you know. But they're basically saying, you know, and also then dropping in this thing about how he's keeping his shooting weekends, which is something that I've been banging on about for the past few weeks, because Andrew basically is given these incredibly lavish, what are called a family day, where you can invite all your mates to come and shoot, and then they all have to invite you all back, right? So it's sort of say one weekend at Windsor sorts you out for the whole season, right? You've then got all your weekends sorted, you've got your whole social life sorted, and yeah, and Parliament would agree. You're quite right, you know, and. So what I'm saying is that if they really want, I'm not, by the way, demanding that they do it. Like I don't, do you know what I mean? It's not like I think that Andrew should be stripped of everything or what have you. Or whether I do think that or not is not the point. The point that I'm making is that the king is not serious about making Andrew's life uncomfortable because he's not removing these bonuses and perks, right? Why do you want to go and live in Abu Dhabi, right? When you have, starting in 2 weeks' time, on the 1st of November, you have the most brilliant winter lined up. You're going to be away every weekend at parties, at people's houses, passing the port to the left or the right, you know, I can't remember which way it is, you know, eating your cheese and, you know, and Andrew loves, this is his thing, right? This is, you know, what he loves doing, the shooting weekends. And, you know, there's been this story around for years that Andrew coming down for breakfast to a shooting weekend and everybody just looking up at from their toast and saying good morning, and him saying, don't you mean good morning, sir? Or going, right. You know, going, let's try that again, and going out and coming in and making them all stand up when he comes into the room. You know,
let's go from the top here. Where are the shooting weekends held? Where does Andrew take these parties of rich, glamorous people to go and shoot for the weekend?
So he gets a weekend at Windsor, which I know for a fact, because I know people who've been on it. So that's what I was going to say when you were talking about where do these sources come from. That's how, like this one, I'm more comfortable to talk about. It's pretty obvious that, you know, that I do have sources that are in that world, are in that rich shooting world. So, like, he definitely has a weekend at Windsor. I'm not that's. It's actually my wife's family tree, Michael. I've got to get it mounted properly. To add to the you know,
these words are still perilously close to my
perilously close. Now, is some of the other reporting interestingly said that he does.
What are they shooting? Yeah. What are they shooting?
Pheasants and partridge.
Thank you. So they'll go out. What? They'll go out on Saturday during the day, shoot the birds.
Well, it's usually actually, funny enough, the really smart shoots are usually actually midweek.
Okay.
Because as one sportsman, as I used to know, when I asked him why he had a shoot on a Tuesday, I said, well, Tuesday's a marvellous day to have a shoot because nobody has anything to do on a Tuesday. And I always thought, what a great world to live in, where not just you, but all your mates had nothing to do on a Tuesday.
It's the ultimate rich person flex, isn't it? You don't wait for the weekend to go shooting on a Tuesday.
No. But, and also, you see, they sell the days at the weekends. So, like, because you can obviously, like, people pay 30, 40, 50 grand for one gun.
And we should make clear the Times story that you're referring to of last night. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but was that story of the palace going, sort of shrugging their shoulders at the Times of London reporter saying there's nothing we can do here? Was that in response to what I just was reading, this incredibly powerful extract from Virginia Giuffre's memoir, which was carried in The Guardian at length?
Yeah.
And I would recommend everybody watching or listening to read that. That's the bedrock context of what Tom is talking about here. Now, this extract by Virginia Giuffre that The Guardian carried from this memoir that her family are publishing posthumously details, really details. It's quite either harrowing or very powerful to read. The initial trafficking of Virginia Giuffre by Jeffrey Epstein, and her initial meeting and relations with Prince Andrew. So, Tom, was what the palace pushing back on, was that all in response to what I've just described, basically?
Yeah, exactly. So the Times basically got a hold of the palace yesterday and said, look, there's a whole load more stuff coming out. The emails came out at the weekend. Now this book's coming out. What are you going to do about it? And they said, well, we can't do anything about it. And here's what and they seem to try to raise the thing of the shooting that I've been talking about.
Yeah.
And here's what the reporter in the Times wrote. What does the Duke of York do all day anyway? Watching golf on television and a twice-weekly horse ride around Windsor Great Park are usually the only highlights. I found that interesting that it's just twice weekly, the horse riding. That said, Andrew is still permitted to take private family holidays at Balmoral and Sandringham and host shooting parties around the Windsor estate. Why does Charles allow it? And then this is a quote from a palace source. There is a sense of having a residual duty of care to him, says a palace source carefully, as they note there is very little left in Andrew's life to make it worthwhile, but beyond occasional contact with a few loyal friends and close family. I mean, that's complete bollocks. There's plenty of people who are still hanging out with Andrew, but that I just find that line so incredibly offensive. There is a sense of having a residual duty of care to him. I mean, in the context of Virginia Giuffre's book coming out, like, the guy at the very least should have been properly interrogated by the police at the very least. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not baying for Andrew's blood or saying, you know, and I understand, you know, that in a civil case in the US, Giuffre was a very compromised witness. You know, she made a lot of stuff up, and she was, you know, I understand all that. But at the same time, Andrew should have at least have been asked questions about this. You know, he is still, I mean, there was a mutual legal assistance request from the FBI to get him over to America to answer questions, which he just ignored.
Well,
I think it's gone away now.
I can see currently in America sort of the highly charged back and forth around Jeffrey Epstein. So I'm not sure that there'll be much from the current FBI around that. The thing that fascinates me from a royal reporting or the sort of trajectory here around Andrew and Charles, what I find interesting about what you just read out from the Times seems to be in conflict when we were working together, and in fact until fairly recently. The general storyline was that Charles wanted Andrew out, and he was going to he was going to turf him out of his home. That it was going to be, you know, full Arctic treatment. Get out of that house. We're not going to pay for you anymore. We're not. This life of this gilded everything is over as far as Charles was concerned. Now, months later, it seems either things have softened a bit, or Charles isn't going to go as nuclear as was once being reported. Can you sketch out to those listening and watching what may have changed in terms of Charles's attitude towards Andrew? And if it has changed, why has it changed from such kind of cold fury, as it were, to now a sort of, I don't know, either a warm acquiescence or a kind of resigned acquiescence? Like, what's happened there?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Tim, because Charles was the architect of kicking Andrew out of the family, right? Charles's dream was the slimmed down royal family. So Charles was the architect of kicking him out of the family. And in 2021, the last Christmas that the Queen was alive, Charles went to church with Andrew privately at 8:30 in the morning before the main walk. In 2022, after the Queen had died, suddenly Charles is there. Andrew is there on the walk to church at Sandringham, which is the most important photo call of the year, right?
Yeah.
That's it. It is, because there's no news on Christmas Day. It's guaranteed to be on the front page. It's on the BBC. It's an absolutely, what was he doing there? I don't know. Everybody scratched their head a bit and said that's a bit weird. And then the narrative that came out was that Charles was this merciful monarch, right? And he was, blah, blah. 2023, Sarah Ferguson's there as well, right? Again, the narrative is, well, the Queen was very grateful to Sarah for getting Andrew to stay out of the way, and she's been great, and blah, 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 blah. I mean, let's just ignore the fact that she did offer to sell access to her husband for £250,000, for which she was never pursued in any proper way, which clear corruption of a public, attempted corruption of a public official in public office. I mean, it's an open and shut case. But yeah, so, and then earlier this year, Sarah Ferguson was with Charles at a cancer reception in Buckingham Palace, when all of this stuff was known about. Andrew Loney, they all knew he was doing that book. He'd been asking questions to everyone. They all knew what was coming. So it was super weird. And yeah, there was this whole thing about he's got to leave the house. Charles just has looked so weak through the whole thing. He can't even just try this sort of ridiculous battle to kick him out of the house that then it turned out that just legally he couldn't. And now we're in this extraordinary situation where Andrew's still getting sent meals from the Windsor Castle kitchen. Like, he's still getting sent like food, like brought down to him in a liveried van and loaded into his freezer.
So it's just what's informing Charles's either softening or either resigned acceptance, or I don't know how you would characterize it, but what's mapped the transition from he's got to go to okay, I guess we have to put up with this, if that's the transition that we're seeing here from King Charles?
Well, I think originally it was vanity and PR management, and I'm going to be this marvelous king. And I think now, frankly, it's death. I mean, I think it's very hard to really understand anything that's going on in the British royal family right now if you only read the English newspapers, which don't actually talk about how ill Charles is. He's not expected to live a huge number of years at this point. And he looks terrible. Sometimes, sorry, I correct myself. Sometimes he looks fine, and sometimes he looks terrible and absolutely exhausted. And people around him say that he's very exhausted, spends a lot of time sleeping, and then is sort of ready to go. But anyone who's had mates with cancer will know, there's all kinds of steroids and all kinds of other things that can make you feel different at different times. And I take my hat off to Charles. He's been incredible, like going around and doing his stuff. But I just get the impression he just hasn't got the strength to deal with it. And I just think it's terrible that his aides haven't dealt with this for him. I just think it's appalling. I think he should have been sheltered from it. He is clearly very ill. And, I mean, I think it's just too much for him. And I think Andrew... Andrew, I was told a year ago that Andrew was planning to wait him out at Royal Lodge, and that he was just going to sit it out at Royal Lodge. He knew Charles was going to die, and that by the time there's a new King William, he's going to have bigger things on his plate than, who's living in what crumbling mansion. So
is there any sense that on the part of royal aides or courtiers that you've spoken to, that the death of Virginia Giuffre has changed palace thinking around the urgency of Andrew in any sense, or not? Did that not factor into any royal thinking, I suppose?
I mean, to be really honest with you, they were all very encouraged when Virginia started posting these mad Instagrams saying that she'd been in a bus crash that then turned out to be a lie. And I think that when her death came, I don't think it made them change their minds particularly. And there is a narrative amongst the Andrew's friends and many of the British upper classes that, Andrew's innocent until proven guilty, that Virginia Giuffre was a sex worker, that, blah, blah, blah. And it's that is a narrative that is there. And I don't know I suspect that Charles knows the truth of the matter. And I suspect that he, knows his brother pretty well and knows about his peccadillos. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty shocking. Can I just say there's one other thing in this Times story that broke last night that I just found absolutely extraordinary. And as anybody who reads the Substack will know, I wrote saying that I was wondering if it was a misprint or a mistake, or if someone had written the wrong thing. This is what they said, and so I screenshotted it to be sure. This is what the journalist wrote in that story. Having talked about Andrew and how awful Andrew was and how bad the Harry problem was, then the journalist says, there is also the Harry problem, the second Duke of Hazard, as he is known in palace circles. A source said, quote, Harry is a greater priority. The whole thing feels off, full stop, close quotes.
What does that mean, Tom? Sorry, I actually don't. I'm not being rude, but I don't actually know what that means or what it's trying to infer. And if I don't know, I'm not sure if those listening and watching can immediately decode that. What is that source saying by it's off? What does all that mean?
I mean, it's. It's a very, very strange quote. The whole thing feels off. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
What does that mean?
God knows. But what does very clearly make sense is Harry is a greater priority.
Again, in terms of what?
In terms of who's the bigger problem.
Okay.
Like they see, and I have heard this totally tallies with what I have been told. They think that Harry is a bigger problem.
Okay.
And I find that I just find it so weird and crazy. Like, okay, Harry, I think Harry even said in his book, didn't he? At least no one had accused us of, sex crimes when comparing himself to Prince Andrew.
That's right, he did. But I mean, I won't play devil's advocate, but I'll play the devil's advocate in terms of now that you've explained what they're talking about in that kind of non-precise word salad, what it means. I think now that you've explained it like that, what I might suggest is what they're saying is that given Harry's global fame and global presence, and he has both of those things that Andrew simply doesn't have. He has a currency in the media and a currency in terms of a global audience alongside Meghan that outstrips what Andrew has. And so I can see from either a management or whatever that source is telling the London Times in that quote, what they probably mean is there's this kind of this royal renegade over here who has a big global presence who we do have to keep an eye on, compared to this sort of renegade figure over here who's kind of washed up and is kind of dealable with. I think that would be my interpretation of that quote. The thing that the thing that we haven't discussed, and which really does come alongside Prince Andrew whenever you're discussing him and whenever we've discussed him in the past. And you mentioned her just a few minutes ago in one of your answers, is Sarah Ferguson, his estranged ex-wife, who they still live together, they still really like each other, they've been one another's great support. Now, what we haven't mentioned is even just a few weeks ago, Sarah Ferguson, having successfully battled cancer, is that right, Tom, last year? Just a few weeks ago was enmeshed in a huge scandal which has led to her being jettisoned from a number of her children's charities. And again, that scandal was around Jeffrey Epstein. Very briefly for everybody, what was it? And it was email related, wasn't it? And communications that she'd shared with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, so basically, she gave an interview to Metro or the Independent or the Guardian. I don't know, she gave an interview to a mainstream newspaper in 2000, after the 2010 or 2011. Said, I bitterly regret accepting 15,000 from Jeffrey Epstein. It was a terrible thing to do. I abhor paedophilia. I don't know how I could have allowed myself to do anything so stupid. I'm terribly sorry. I will never contact him again. How many times do you want me to say it? I will never contact him again. And promptly emailed him 6 weeks later saying, oh, I'm terribly sorry about that story I wrote that they wrote about me in the newspaper. They misquoted me about paedophilia. And I only said it because I was worried that otherwise I'd lose my book and charity career. I mean, it's an unbelievably stupid thing to write an email, but her people did confirm that the email was genuine, and she did send it. So, it was just sort of, I think it was the final straw for her. So she was fired by all the children's charities that she's been spending time working out with. So in fact, also one thing that happened today was that it was Sarah Ferguson's birthday today. Now, I haven't checked in the last half hour, but I don't think either of her daughters wished her a happy birthday. I mean, those poor girls. I mean, I do feel really sorry for them. And I know loads of people who know them and, friends of theirs and stuff. And I do feel really, really sorry for them. I'm sure they've been drawn into it. I'm sure they're terrified that more stuff is going to come out. But, they're both trying to have families and kids and stuff. And it's, oh my God, that must be awful to not be able to publicly wish your own mother happy birthday. I mean, that is horrible. I do feel
day to day.
But they've probably done the right thing.
Day to day, where does this leave? Can you convey to people watching? You've got Andrew and his ex-wife sort of in this sort of odd cocoon that they occupy within the current royal family structure, kind of detached, but still somehow within it, not fully rejected, not fully jettisoned. Scandals periodically erupt around them, which would seem to suggest even further distancing from the core of a family, but still not completely detached. Day to day for them, and in the wider sense of either big or special occasions, as ever we discussed it last time, like Christmas and Sandringham, where and how do sort of Andrew and Fergie, as she is colloquially known, exist within the royal family structure? Are they just completely sort of detached and wheeled out when it's seen as safe, or are they seen in any way affectionately by any members of the family, or does the family see them, as you showed me when we last had a chat, in that recent photo of William alongside Andrew and sort of looking like he'd rather be anywhere else? Is that the general family? What's the Andrew situation?
Yeah, I mean that is the general vibe. That definitely, there is no affection for it. I mean, William is particularly. Actually, I think I've got some of those from last time. William is that's at the Duchess of Kent's funeral, and you can see there was a sort of interest around it because Charles sort of looked so. And there he is shooting. So I'll see if I can find. There's Virginia. There he is. Yeah, these are actually the ones that we had last time, Tim. But if I could find, it's annoying I haven't got the one of William scowling, because there's an amazing one of William's just at the other side of Charles, like looking at them with absolute disgust.
That's right,
Andrew
but
tries
just
to talk
just to remain on topic, like we can see that
Yeah.
they still are expected to go and invited to go to these official occasions, such as this member of a family's funeral that you're speaking about. So there is that, right? They're not absolutely exiled in some sort of sense.
So, well, this is the whole question. Are they now going to be more exiled? Now, this was the Duchess of Kent's funeral. This was on September the 6th, 2 days before the state visit of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And they were given, Andrew and Sarah were given, and I have confirmed this with sources who were there, were given a police escort to the to Westminster Cathedral, where the ceremony was held. So all this argument of like, oh, there's nothing Charles can do. He can't fire him from being his brother. He can't do this. He can't do that. Well, at the same time, Prince Harry, who came to England 2 days later, was not given any escort and was made to be late for everything in a way to sort of, which I felt was very deliberate kind of humiliation of him, because there was a tube strike on at the time as well. I was in London. It was actually mad. You couldn't get around anywhere. It was a nightmare. And I just found that really interesting that Andrew is still getting police escorts all over the place and Harry's not. And that goes back, of course, to the whole security thing, because Andrew still has security. Harry doesn't. So, yeah, and the thing is that the palace they're trying to speak out of both sides of their mouth at the same time, because on one hand, they're trying to say, well, we've told Andrew, that he must be very low profile, he must be invisible when he comes to these events, or, but then they're not saying you can't come to the event. Do you know what I mean? They're actually saying, the opposite. They're actually saying you can come to the event, you just need to leave via the side door. Well, what are you going to do if he doesn't leave via the side door? If he decides to walk out the front door? Is William supposed to wrestle him to the ground? I mean, it's bonkers. And so, it's a complete mess. It's a complete mess. And essentially, until Charles actually instructs somebody to deal with it, I don't believe Charles should have to deal with it himself, but he must instruct somebody to deal with it.
Yeah.
And, it needs to be dealt with, because it's a massive humiliation. It's a massive humiliation.
We've been speaking for almost an hour, and I'm sure people want us to stop at some point. We could carry on gossiping all night. That's the thing with me and Tom. So apologies to everyone who needs to get on with other things. But before we head off into the night, as it were, Tom, the future of Prince Andrew, very briefly, just in a few sentences. What's your informed view, given this latest thing and where we are at the moment? What do you think the future for Andrew is? Is it just a blank sort of semi-detached slate? Is there any purpose there anymore? Any role? Anything looking ahead? Or what is the future for this figure?
I don't think Charles is going to do anything. I think if he was, he would have done it by now. And I think all these briefings consistently say we're not going to do anything. There's no point doing anything. I think William has a very different idea. I'm pretty convinced that William will call him in on maybe not day 1, but maybe day 15, and we'll say, okay, buddy, here's the choice. If you insist on staying in the United Kingdom, we will remove your title. We will have an Act of Parliament. I will issue new letters patent to take away your princely title. You will be buried in a grave that will read Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. And your children will never be given any role or any invitations ever to the family ever again. If you quietly bugger off into the sunset, and he does have a villa in Abu Dhabi, he has mates all over that part of the world where there's excellent golf, wonderful masseuses, and very, very good shooting. Maybe an accommodation can be reached that he can go and live his sleazy lifestyle, in another part of the world. But to be totally honest, I feel like it's the UK's problem to sort it out. He's a prince of the United Kingdom, and I think there's something massively distasteful about just shipping him off to Abu Dhabi. I think that it has to be dealt with. But I think he's okay while Charles was alive. But I think he's in big trouble once King William IV arrives.
Well, as I said earlier on in this bit of our conversation, anyone interested in the current state of things should definitely read the Guardian extract of Virginia Giuffre's posthumously published memoir to see the wellspring of all of this. And it's extremely powerfully written. But there we go, Tom. Another hour spent.
Another hour. And now, Tim, I've also got to tell you this, but we definitely can't do it tomorrow because I'm at a party. We definitely can't do it on Saturday because I'm at a party.
Well, I mean, you know.
William V, I'm sorry, Sean.
What a fine life. What a fine
Sean
life.
corrected me, as always, Tim.
William V.
William
well
V.
done. Well
William
done.
V.
Well done.
But maybe Sunday, if there's some news to talk about, I'm sure there will be.
This is a busy family. I'm sure there will always be news.
Brilliant. All right. Well, listen, everybody, thank you so much for coming. No, not a shooting party. No, definitely not. The season doesn't start for another 2 weeks. Brilliant. All right. Thanks very much, everybody, for being here. Bye.
Bye.